I'm very happy to be here today to introduce you with Safelia, which is an innovation. An innovation on our market, we all know it doesn't happen every day. So here is an innovative autoinjector on the market, so for the patient, for new formulation. And we all know that in our industry where there is all this regulatory constraint, this is a pretty long challenge, and this is a device that has behind its name a few years of development. So first of all, let me introduce you where I'm speaking from. I'm from Nemera. So the one of you which know Nemera, it's a new name on the industry since about 2 years. We used to be Rexam Healthcare, Rexam pharmaceutical company. And we are purely doing some pharmaceutical devices on the market, drug delivery devices, in 5 different areas. So the first one here is, can't see, ear, nose, and throat pumps. We also do pulmonary delivery device like DPIs and PMDIs. We also developed innovative eyedroppers, multi-dose eyedroppers for preservative-free formulation. In the parenteral area, we have safety devices, and Safelia is an autoinjector. And we also have dermal application for airless solution. We are today about 1,300 people working from Europe and from the US as a team working really together. We today have about 215 million euros revenues, and we are growing our business pretty steadily, hoping to reach 275 million by end of 2016. We really appreciate and going the extra miles to deliver on our commitment in our different areas. Innovation, so developing our own innovative devices that we can offer off the shelf, but also co-developing some formulation, some devices for formulation, meaning we have 70 engineers working to co-develop, and also contract manufacture. So now going to Safelia autoinjector. So the landscape of Safelia is for home care administration. So we all know that having an autoinjector is a challenge, as it is no more in the hand of professionals, of nurses. It's in the hand of patients, different types of patients that we want to maintain as long as possible in their home care settings for different reasons. Obviously, governments are just willing to also reduce healthcare costs by promoting the more treatments in the home care settings, but also for people to be treated in their environments around their beloved around them. And also just we are treating more and more chronic diseases, so home care setting is the best environment for treatments. However, just treating people in a home care setting means we have to take care of something which is the people's willingness to be treated, so people adherence to their treatments. That's why developing an autoinjector is all about caring. So people have to be willing. Obviously, autoinject ourselves is not the best way to administer a solution, so we would prefer, obviously, having a formulation taken orally or on a dermal application. But most of the formulation today can only be injected through either subcutaneous or intramuscular injection. So therefore, the more gentle we can be in the injection itself, the best it is for the patient. Also, sorry for the image, I might be shaking, but this is really just important to consider when we're developing an autoinjector, that to consider that the device itself has to be robust. The device will be just taken, carried into handbags for the people to be treating themselves. The device will be maybe dropped, and it has to be functional. So robustness of the device development is really something key when we're considering developing a new autoinjector. Another important point is the change in the type of the formulations themselves that we will administer. That we all know nowadays that there are more and more biologics formulation on the markets. Today, so about 30% of total revenues in 2016 are generated by biological formulation compared to small molecules. So if you compare like the complexity of biologics comparing to, for example, aspirin, 21 just atoms themselves. If you're considering an immunoglobulin, it's about 25,000 atoms, so we are not in the same scale. So that's generating different type of things into the formulation, meaning that we have formulation which are more viscous, which are also sensible to the shear force, for example, which they are more fragile formulation as well to administer. So this is something very important when we're considering injecting through an autoinjector, to consider the type of formulation we want to inject as well, and to be able to respect the type of formulation. Another point as well is that the formulation tend to be also more viscous. By having biologics, you have more viscous formulation, so you tend to have dilute them to larger volumes to be administered. So we are not only considering 1 ml prefilled syringe for injection, we're also considering 2 1/4, for example, very typically to be injected in the sub-Q or intramuscular layers. So this is really important just for autoinjector to know, and to know that we have to deliver in a time frame that people can accept, so usually below the 10 seconds, the golden 10, even larger volume up to 2 ml. And one point which is really key when we consider administration, it's to remember that the primary container is still mostly in glass, and glass is brittle. So when we administer through a compressed spring over a glass, it's very key into designing new autoinjector is to be able to respect, obviously, the integrity of the primary container, and not to have this type of image, not to have any cracks on the glass. And that was with Safelia autoinjector. We really consider avoiding especially any stress around the most brittle part of the prefilled syringe, which is the flange. Flanges are obviously the most brittle part of the primary container, and with Safelia, we do not exert any stress at all around the syringe flange. We hold the syringe around the neck, around the bottom, and into compression when the spring is released. So there is no risk of glass breakage. So here are the platforms that we have with Safelia. We have 2 platforms. One in 1 ml for 1 ml prefilled syringes, and one with 2 1/4 prefilled syringes. Sorry. Okay, there's one part which is missing here. So let's consider here there's a number 1, which is the cap removal. So Safelia is a simple 2 steps autoinjector. So 1 is you remove the cap itself, a very simple movement. So at this moment you don't have any needle exposed. And then 2, you press it on your injection site, and that's where it will trigger the injection. So simple 2 steps injection. So for the patient point of view, it's the simplest movement. So trying to reduce, no button activated at the moment, simple 2 steps, and it's automatic trigger of the needle penetration, the injection of the formulation, and then automatic return to a safety position at the end of the injection. So that is what is called 2 steps autoinjector. So why do we consider the need of tailoring autoinjection today? So we talked about different type of viscosity, different type of formulation behavior to be injected, different type of population to be targeted. We also have different type of needles to be considered, and that's where it's really key to be able to tailor not only the needle penetration itself, but also during the whole course or automatic delivery of the formulation. And that's what Safelia autoinjector is able to do it, to tailor the force applied during the course of delivering the formulation before the automatic needle retraction to the safety position. How do we do that? The key of Safelia is this cam-driven system. So cam-driven system, you have 2 paths here, which enables us, sorry, I cannot show you with the pointer, to enable us to deliver first the needle penetration. I will show you with my hands. This angle is when the needle penetrates into the skin here. So you can, by design, adjust this angle of the cam, just if you want more or less speed into your needle penetration into your skin. And then only when it's at the right depth, the second cam will drive the push onto the piston. So that's how you can disconnect the needle penetration first, and only when it's at the right depth, you will start injecting. So with Safelia, you don't push the formulation and inject in the same time. You really disconnect the two thanks to this cam movement. And according to the shape you have around the cam movement here, you can really, during the course of delivering of your formulation, adjust the speed of delivering. So you can slow down the beginning or slow down the end of your formulation, depending on your formulation behavior and what you want to achieve. So that's really allowed us a lot of flexibility in terms of design. So one important key is specifically if you're targeting some deeper tissues like intramuscular, you first insert your needle into the intramuscular layer before starting injected. So you don't have any formulation which is delivered into sub-Q before reaching the IM level. So that's really this disconnection. First you insert your needle, and then you start to inject. Another important thing, thanks to this cam system, is you avoid really having the spring release effect. So in the traditional autoinjector, usually when the spring is released, you really start having the whole stress which is transmitted to the primary container, but also transmitted to the initial flow out of the syringe. So you really have this bang effect, I would say, when the spring is released. Thanks to this cam system, we really avoid that with Safelia. So we also avoid the effect of the spring release on the initial flow out of the syringe. So meaning first the initial peak tends to push the needle into the skin, and when it's at the right depth, the spring will carry on expanding, pushing on the plunger rod. So you won't have this initial flow that can create some bruising, for example, because the formulation is spread along very rapidly into the body tissue. Here it's much smoother, and you can even slow down the beginning if you wish. Then during the course itself of the injection, you can really tailor as you wish, depending on this cam system, the delivery of the formulation, either more in a constant way, or at the beginning slower, or at the end slower if you wish, to allow sufficient time for the tissue to absorb the formulation before the retraction. So thanks to Safelia, we can also go to thinner needles. We can have a stronger spring to be applied into the device without creating the system to create some stress on the glass syringe. So we can really go to thinner needles. So 29G, for example, 27G thin wall, even with viscous formulation, is really something we can achieve. And for the patient benefits, we believe this is really key to be able to have thinner needle autoinjector. So we can adjust, obviously, the spring force and the spring length according to the viscosity, the volumes, and the time targeted into the design system. This is very easy to adjust. And this is just to give you examples of, on the two platforms of Safelia, 1 ml and 2¼ here, delivery time up to highly viscous formulation. So we took in the lab up to 500 centipoise, so very, very viscous formulation. If I take just an example of 100 centipoise, with a 27G thin wall needle, we can deliver 1 ml in 12 seconds. That's an example of it. And the same with a 2¼ delivery formulation. Just an example here to just show you how we can adjust the cam design to just tailor the end of injection to be slowed down. Once again, this is much more robust than having, for example, a damper with oil, for example, towards the end of injection. This cam is purely mechanical, so it's not subject to any change depending on the formulation. We have a delayed mechanism before retraction. We can be purely induced without any additional part, just a pure mechanical design. Why would you slow down the end of injection? That's really just, if you want to deliver your formulation as fast as possible, this is obviously possible. But slowing down the end of injection can be key if you have large volume and highly viscous formulation. For example, if you want to inject 2¼ ml into the sub-Q level, we know towards the end we create more stress by pushing the last 0.3 or 0.2 ml, that's creating a lot of pressure towards the end. So instead of giving a lot of pressure, creating the tissue to expand rapidly, we may want to slow down to let a bit of time for the tissue to absorb the last part of the formulation. So that's really something we can do easily by design. Also, this CAM system allows us really to adapt to different formulation behavior. If you have a thixotropic formulation, if you have a shear thinning formulation, we really can adapt the force applied all along the course to respect your formulation, so it's delivered in its best integrity to the patients. And that's really open up widely the area of delivery. So we open up to be able to deliver more viscous product. I took the example of honey here, but we know that up to 500, we did some testing in the lab. It works, obviously. We need to adapt the needle gauge, we need to adapt the time, but this is something, as we can really go with much stronger springs, that's usually what the industry is taking so far. We did some testing with 75 Newton, with 90 Newton spring, something that's really open up really beyond what the existing frame of delivery today is possible. So, last but not least, at the end, there is automatic needle retraction. So when the delivery is completed, there is no risk of pricking ourselves. So this is obviously something really key just to be able to better protect the patient. And I really want to conclude this by what is key in the industry is really taking care of what the patient population we are targeting to try to reach a better adherence, compliance to the treatments. So having a device which is adapted to the patient population, adapted to different type of pathology is really key for us to consider. And now that we have a device that can really be tailored in different ways, this is something now feasible. So now it's not the formulation which has to adapt to the device really can offer frame to be able to adapt to different kind of population. And thus, I will conclude with that. So a bit of change of our view of our mind. So instead of staying on Earth and just looking at the moon, I just propose you to change the horizon and really consider the formulation integrity, the patient first, and that's a device we will adapt to be able to deliver the different type of formulation. Thank you very much.